truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our planned guest today is David Daleiden, investigative journalist and founder of the Center for Medical Progress. We're still trying to connect with him. He is in Washington, D.C. right now on this historic day, this day of the U.S. Supreme Court oral argument, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health. And so that's going to be our topic. We're going to dive into that today, hopefully with David. We'll see if we can finally connect with him. But yeah, a lot of excitement in Washington, D.C. right now, and we're going to get into that. We'll open up the phone lines as well and get your take. Did you watch the oral arguments today, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health? Actually listen to them. There was no video of it within the Supreme Court, but we did get audio. It was planned to be about 70 minutes, and they almost went double what they had planned, going about 2 hours. So again, we're going to have some highlights of that today for you, and get some commentary in, hopefully some of your commentary as well. But first, it's important that we always begin this Current Events Wednesday show by remembering that the biggest current event of all is the number one news story that ought to be reported by all the networks, but is going unreported today and every day, and that is the ongoing daily government-sanctioned, government-funded, government-protected mass murder of innocent children in the wombs of their mothers. Real people being murdered by the thousands today and every day in our nation, which also means the mass exploitation of pregnant moms in need for profit by the lie of abortion. In terms of loss of human life, we have at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S. Imagine 3,000 of any other category of persons being murdered in a given day in our nation, and it going unreported by the media and even mostly ignored by the churches. Imagine if that was happening every day, and you begin to understand something of the insane reality in which we find ourselves. According to a July 2020 article in the prestigious peer-reviewed medical journal The Lancet, we have a global death toll from abortion of more than 200,000 preborn children being murdered worldwide every day. 200,000 worldwide every day. It is essential that we put great effort into breaking through our own desensitization to this massive evil. We have to face reality on this and so much more. We must live, proclaim, and push forward the vision that every innocent human being, without exception, has a right to life. Even an atheist still ought to have the basic moral sense to see the evil of killing an innocent child. For those who believe in Jesus and His Catholic Church, we have the additional benefit of crystal clear, authoritative magisterial teaching on this, which truly gives us absolutely no place to hide in treating those in the womb as any less valuable than us. Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270, quote, "Human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception," meaning fertilization. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life. End of quote. Also, if you've experienced abortion in some way, as a mother, father, sibling, grandparent, etc., there are some great people, great resources available to help you in your healing process. We love you. You are not alone. You can go to lovewillendchildkilling.com, click on the healing tab for lots more information there. All right, so getting into the topic for today, the U.S. Supreme Court oral argument for Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health. So this is that case coming out of the state of Mississippi where they're trying to ban abortions at the line of 15 weeks. And so this has now made its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court hearing those oral arguments today. All of it was available live streaming. You could listen to the audio. I listened to it in its entirety and picked out some highlights that we will go through today. So if you missed it, you're going to get some highlights here. I haven't really had time to look at much analysis or hear any analysis yet of what others are saying. So I'm not really sure what people are taking away from this, but I'm going to give you my takeaway. I invite you to call in and give me your takeaway. If you listen today and you have something that you'd like to share, any questions, any comments, feel free to call in 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. But it does sound like we do have our guest with us now, David Daleiden. He is founder of the Center for Medical Progress, investigative journalist. He also developed and executed the investigation documenting Planned Parenthood's illegal sale of body parts from aborted babies, which has had and continues to have a major impact in the fight against the evil of abortion. You can learn more about his good work at centerformedicalprogress.org. But David Daleiden, thank you for being with us today from Washington, D.C. on this historic day of the U.S. Supreme Court oral argument, Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health. How are you?
Hey, it's great to be with you. I'm honestly doing great. I mean, I'm really thankful to be here in Washington, D.C. right now, and incredibly thankful for just the absolutely historic moment that our movement, that the pro-life movement had today at the United States Supreme Court, at the highest court of the land. I was listening to the entire oral argument, almost 2 hours long, live tweeting it from my Twitter at David Daleiden, and also Center for Medical Progress was live tweeting some of it on our Twitter account as well. But today was an absolutely historic day, not only because I think even the establishment press that normally doesn't like to report on issues of abortion policy and issues of human life in the womb, even they are acknowledging today that there's a clear majority, and perhaps even bigger than just a regular majority on the Supreme Court today that seems extremely skeptical of the old, outdated abortion cases that the Supreme Court has heard before, Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey. There seems to be a majority that doesn't believe that those cases are good law anymore, and that we need to have a new, more modern, more factual way forward and a more humane path forward. But more importantly, what was so historic about today, and I'm still kind of processing the full significance of it legally, spiritually, everything, that this is today was the most, in any Supreme Court case, in any Supreme Court argument in history, that the highest court in the land, and looking at the United States Constitution and looking at the people under the jurisdiction of our government across the country, this is the most the Supreme Court has ever focused on the humanity of children in the womb, of our brothers and sisters in the womb, and they did it in the context of this 15-week abortion in the state of Mississippi has passed, which that sort of early second trimester time period of children aged 14, 15, 16 weeks along, that sort of used to be flyover country in the overall abortion debate. We didn't always talk about that so much. People talking about later term abortion, partial birth abortions, or really early medication abortion. But this sort of 15, 16, 17-week time period was sort of glossed over a lot until the undercover videos that I filmed and that Center for Medical Progress released, showing the highest level leadership of Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers negotiating over the harvesting and sale of baby body parts, laughing and joking about how, I had a 17-weeker the other day, and that's where we were going to get all the livers and the lungs and the heart and the kidneys from to sell from those 17-week abortions, those 17-week fetuses. So that early second trimester time period is, where some of those kids are basically the most at risk for fetal trafficking, for experiments. And my organization and my investigative reporting really spotlighted that time period, spotlighted those abortions in particular, and got people talking about them in a way that we were not before. We started a conversation about the humanity of children in the womb pre-viability, as they say, as was talked about at the Supreme Court a lot, that there's allegedly some significance about whether or not how long a baby could survive a premature birth at whichever stage. But our videos put a spotlight on the humanity of the child in the womb in that so-called pre-viability stage. And that was on full display today at the Supreme Court, and never in history has the highest court in the land talked about the humanity of our brothers and sisters in the womb the way that they did today, examined their claims to their interests, their right to life under the United States Constitution. Even issues of the constitutional personhood of children in the womb were mentioned for the first time today in Supreme Court oral argument. So it really it was an absolutely historic day, and I think that this is just the first of many historic days to come. This is the beginning of great blessings that will pour down on our nation and on our people if we end and revoke the covenant with the culture of death that we made in Roe versus Wade 50 years ago, and we embrace restoring respect for human life to the center of American law. I just think it's a really incredible time, and I just think everybody listening should be so encouraged, because I certainly was today listening to the argument.
Yes, much to be encouraged by, absolutely. And we are blessed to have David Daleiden here with us, the founder of the Center for Medical Progress, investigative journalist. His work so important to all that is happening here. And when we get back, we're going to talk to David about the amicus brief that he and Center for Medical Progress wrote and filed in the case. We're also going to get get more into detail on some of his impressions and his commentary on some of the oral argument today. We'll play some clips, some highlights for you as well. So it's all coming up right here. Stay tuned to The Simple Truth. We'll be right back.
If you're looking to make the most out of what you can donate to Catholic Radio, making a transfer of stock is a great opportunity for your giving to go even further in support of the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network. Please consider this option in helping us spread the gospel message over the airwaves and through mobile devices. Many people donate to charities by gifting stock. There are even substantial tax benefits for donating stock to a charity such as ours. Would you like to learn more about the possibility of gifting stock to the Station of the Cross Catholic Radio Network? Please call us at 1-877-888-6279. That's 1-877-888-6279. You can also visit us online at thestationofthecross.com. That's thestationofthecross.com. Thank you for your support of Catholic Radio. May God bless you and your family.
Do you love listening to the Station of the Cross on your car radio, but sometimes find yourself driving outside the listening area? Never miss another minute of your favorite show. Download the iCatholic Radio app so you can listen anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. The iCatholic Radio app is available for your phone in the Apple Store or for your Android phone in Google Play. Visit thestationofthecross.com for more information.
30 seconds on the gifts of the Holy Spirit, brought to you by the Station of the Cross. The gift of wisdom helps us to make the right decision in the present moment of our lives. Choosing to join the corporate world or to live as a missionary may not be a moral issue, but it's important to pray for the gift of wisdom to discern God's will for our lives.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here. Current Events Wednesday. Our guest today, David Daleiden, investigative journalist and founder of the Center for Medical Progress, centerformedicalprogress.org. He's in D.C. on this historic day of the U.S. Supreme Court oral argument for Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health. David, tell us about the amicus brief that you and the Center for Medical Progress wrote and filed in this case.
Sure. So earlier this year, over the summer, when we first found out that the Supreme Court was going to be hearing this case on the 15-week abortion limit in Mississippi, Center for Medical Progress and I filed what's called an amicus curiae brief. That's amicus curiae is Latin for friend of the court. So friend of the court briefs can be filed in any Supreme Court case when there's someone who is not directly or not immediately a party to the case, but has some kind of special knowledge or expertise in the facts or in the law of the case that might be that might be helpful to the Supreme Court justices and might assist them in deciding in hearing and deciding the case. People and organizations will sometimes file amicus curiae briefs in order to do that. So I wrote, and with the help of some lawyers, kind of fixed up and then filed the ultimate amicus curiae brief for CMP and myself, where we basically argue that our undercover videos that caught Planned Parenthood and their business partners selling aborted baby body parts, our undercover videos basically make this case really simple. Because if a child in the womb, or if a baby who is vulnerable to abortion is old enough for their body parts to be sold for experiments, that same child should obviously be old enough to be protected from being killed by abortion in the first place, because the body parts are only valuable for Planned Parenthood and their business partners to sell, precisely because they're human beings just like us. And no one has challenged the appropriate constitutional interest that states and that the federal government have in stopping the commodification of human beings by prohibiting the sale of aborted baby body parts, because of their interest in avoiding the commodification of human infants in the womb. And so if that is a legitimate interest that the government has and that the people, through their elected representatives, have, then surely they have an interest in protecting those same children from being commodified, from being killed by abortion in the first place. So that's basically the argument that we make in our amicus curiae brief. It's available online. You can find it on the Supreme Court website, on the docket for the Dobbs case that was heard today. You can also find it on the page for the Dobbs v. Jackson case on the SCOTUS blog. You go to scotusblog.com. And, of course, it's also on our website at centerformedicalprogress.org. We also, in the amicus brief, sort of like riffing on that theme of basically the clear and obvious state interests in protecting children in the womb from being killed by abortion, that really isn't something that should be controversial, right? Because of the vast majority of states around the country, and also the United States federal government, have already for decades recognized unborn children, children in the womb, as persons under state and federal laws for all kinds of purposes, for purposes of protecting them from various injuries, for purposes of securing various constitutional rights they have to be protected from injury and from crime. Some people may be familiar with the federal Unborn Victims of Violence Act. So for most significant purposes, unborn children are already treated in our country under law as human beings who have constitutional interests who can be protected, and yet there's just this one crazy exception for abortion. It's really, it's really very, very bizarre and very internally contradictory in our legal system, and it has been ever since the advent of legalized abortion. So that's something that we felt was really important to point out to the Supreme Court as well. Kind of following the same line as the first argument, that in the state of Mississippi, it's like in most states around the country, if a pregnant woman who is 15 weeks along, if she is in an accident or she is attacked or assaulted in some way, and the baby is hurt or the baby is even killed in that process, the criminal, the perpetrator, can be liable for homicide for killing the baby. And yet it's legal to go in and have that same baby killed, pay an abortion doctor, pay Planned Parenthood to kill that same age child. So that's a clear equal protection violation, that some people's deaths will be prosecuted by homicide and protected when they're 15 weeks along, but others, you can pay the abortion doctor to kill them, and that's fine. It's a total contradiction at the heart of our law, and that is not treating people equally, and that disparate treatment of pre-viability, so-called pre-viability infants and infants in the womb and premature infants, that disparity caused by abortion law has led to tragic and lethal consequences for post-viable infants, for post-viable premature infants, for third trimester babies who most pro-abortion people would say, they should be protected. Well, because of legalized abortion, that's how Kermit Gosnell in Pennsylvania was able to operate for so long without any accountability. Your listeners may be familiar with the Kermit Gosnell case in Philadelphia from about 10 years ago. Long time practicing abortion doctor was indicted and convicted of murder for killing late-term born-alive infants who were past the age of viability, meaning they could have survived on their own outside the womb, but he delivered them alive in his abortion clinic and killed them by snipping their necks with surgical scissors. People in Pennsylvania knew that there were bad things happening at Kermit Gosnell's clinic. They knew that women were being hurt. They knew that there were things that were not supposed to be done that were happening there. There were inspections done and reports made. Reports filed with officials in Pennsylvania, and yet the grand jury found that there was an official government policy in the state of Pennsylvania where the government of Pennsylvania believed that inspecting and enforcing the law over Kermit Gosnell's clinic would cause an undue burden, per the Supreme Court's language in the Planned Parenthood v. Pacey opinion from 1992, believed that just enforcing the regular post-Roe v. Wade law in Pennsylvania would cause an undue burden on the early abortions at Kermit Gosnell's clinic, or the earlier abortions. And so for that reason, the state turned a blind eye. He was able to do illegal late-term abortions for 17 years, kill countless viability age infants, maim and traumatize scores and scores of women. And it was 17 years before he was brought to justice. So the absolute schizophrenia in American law that the old antiquated abortion cases from the 1900s have wrought, have had horrible consequences for our civilization, for our society, and people who, the vast majority of people would even agree, even people who support abortion say should be protected and should have a right to live, and even those infants are not safe under the regime of legal abortion. So these are all arguments that we made in the amicus brief, and we pointed out to the Supreme Court. And again, it's very inspiring, and it's very hope inspiring to see how today there were multiple justices on the Supreme Court who drew attention, and how the course of the argument drew attention to the humanity of our brothers and sisters in the womb, and to their right to life. And yes, that's, it always should have been that way. It's the sort of thing that almost, I think you look back, you look back on the great historic injustices of the past, right? Like chattel slavery and the Shoah in Europe and things like that. And we all want to think, if I had been around at that time, what would I have done, or would I have been different? Would I have stood up and said, no, this is wrong. You can't treat people this way. William Wilberforce with the slave trade in the early 1800s. And what we got to see today at the Supreme Court is actually is an example of the American system starting to correct itself, right? It's an example of a grave historic injustice, the industrial scale slaughter of children in the womb being exposed for what it is under the correct legal procedures of our country, being exposed for what it is, for the truth of what it is under the rule of law, and beginning to be dealt with under the rule of law. God willing, it will not take a civil war. It will not take a revolution. We have the tools, if we're faithful to who we're supposed to be as a country. We have the tools to solve this problem. It's almost 2022. We don't need to kill children in the womb anymore in order to have progress for our communities and in order to get ahead as a civilization. And that great truth is starting to dawn on the highest levels, elites of the country, from the Supreme Court on down, and also among the common people all across the country. So that's what we are all that's the history that we are all part of right now. That's the history that we are all watching today, and we'll watch in the coming weeks and months ahead. And this Dobbs case is just the beginning. Even if the Supreme Court were to issue a summary opinion tomorrow, completely overturning Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, there's more work to be done. There's more work to totally erase the scourge of abortion from our country, and to repair for the damage that has been done over decades. And we're ready to do it. Our movement has been preparing for this for a long time. We're ready to go. The healing starts now, and it can't start a moment too soon. Mm-hmm. So yes. It's a really special time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It sounded to me today, from what I heard in the arguments, that many of the justices are there in terms of the argumentation on drawing the line at something like what Mississippi is saying, like 15 weeks, or they're going to revisit it. It sounds like, I mean, even Roberts saying that viability is arbitrary. Why can't we just make the line 15 weeks? That's the case that is before us. And then many of the other justices saying things similar. I want to ask you about the strategy, though, because my hope would still be that not only would Roe and Casey be overturned, but that these justices would look at the scientific fact that we are talking about human beings, human persons from conception, fertilization onward, and show that there's a constitutional right to life for every human being, every human person. We get in big trouble once we start saying that some human beings aren't human persons and are of less value. And that is really the logic behind what we're seeing here. I'm hoping these justices even now might find it within their hearts and minds to say, we're going to go there and we're going to correct all of this. But representing the state of Mississippi Solicitor General Scott Stewart thought he did a good job today, I think, with the strategy he had in mind. But he seems set against making any kind of scientific, natural law, personhood argument that would call for that constitutional right to life for the preborn from conception, fertilization. He seemed very much locked in on that argument to overturn Roe and Casey, which is obviously very, very good, to send it all back to the states, but it definitely doesn't go far enough in recognizing that right to life for all preborn children, as well as the best interests of their mothers. What is your take on that strategy that you saw on display today?
Yeah, so I personally don't. I did not hear the Solicitor General's for Mississippi's argument to be that tactically extreme in one direction or another. My take on the Dobbs case and the issues as they're before the court, layperson that I am, investigative journalist, not a lawyer. But I think, my take on it is I think that all options are on the table for the court right now. I think that is actually part of I think that's one of the things that is really, really helpful and really good about the Dobbs case. That if the Supreme Court wants, if they feel that this case is the appropriate vehicle and the issue is properly before them right now, they could issue an opinion where they recognize that children in the womb have
We're going to be right back. Stay tuned.
And liberty under.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
Catholic radio has just been a lifesaver for me. I start my day with it. I listen to it all day long as much as I can. There's always people calling in with people who've lost children, and I love what everyone has to say and the advice of the Catholic Church and how to deal with suffering. It has given me the strength to get through the day and to get out of bed each morning. I am very grateful for it.
Catholic radio to me has been very informative on my religion. It has informed me of many things that I wasn't aware of or should have been aware of, and I've enjoyed it very much listening to it.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
Up until 14 days from fertilization, the new baby's stem cells can separate and form an entirely new person, resulting in identical twins. Contrary to popular belief, identical twins are not a hereditary trait. God simply decides that the world needs two of these special people. Human life is sacred. Think about it. coalitionforlife.com.
This is Rick Paolini
and Father Jacek Mazer.
Join us every Sunday morning at 11 for Divine Mercy in My Soul.
Let the weak, the sinful soul have no fear to approach me. For even if it had more sins than there are grains of sand in the world,
it would all disappear.
Yes.
So tune in for Divine Mercy in My Soul every Sunday morning at 11.
And catch the encore presentation every Tuesday evening at 8.
Jezu ufam Tobie.
Jesus, I trust in you.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, David Daleiden, investigative journalist and founder of the Center for Medical Progress. You can find it at centerformedicalprogress.org. He's in D.C. on this great day, this day of history of the U.S. Supreme Court oral argument for Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health, which has us all hopeful and encouraged for what the Supreme Court might do coming out of this. David, I want to play for you just a couple of quick clips and get your response to them. This first one is what I saw as a great opportunity right here. This is an example of what I was saying before, to proclaim the science and that very simple truth that all innocent human beings, human persons, no matter their age, have a constitutional right to life. And listen, this is going to be Justice Sotomayor beginning this question, talking about how is your interest anything but a religious view. And then it seems like as it goes, Justice Alito hops in and even seems to try to tee up the Mississippi Solicitor General Stewart on the scientific argument. And he seems, in my view, to balk at it. But you guys be the judge. Here it is. Here's the clip. Justice Sotomayor beginning. Go.
How is your interest anything but a religious view? The issue of when life begins has been hotly debated by philosophers since the beginning of time. It's still debated in religions. So when you say this is the only right that takes away from the state the ability to protect the life, that's a religious view, isn't it? Because it assumes that a fetus is life at when? You're not drawing when do you suggest we begin that life?
Your Honor, aside from
putting it aside from religion,
I'll try to. I think there might be more than one question, and I'll do my very best, Justice Sotomayor. I think this court in Gonzalez pretty clearly recognized that before viability, we are talking with unborn life with a human organism. And I think the philosophical questions Your Honor mentioned, all those reasons that they're hard, they've been debated, they're important, those are all reasons to return this to the people, because the people should get to debate these hard issues. And this court does not in that kind of a circumstance.
So when does the life of a woman and putting her at risk enter the calculus? Meaning, right now, forcing women who are poor, and that's 75% of the population, and much higher percentage of those women in Mississippi who elect abortions before viability, they are put at a tremendously greater risk of medical complications and ending their life, 14 times greater to give birth to a child full term than it is to have an abortion before viability. And now the state is saying to these women, we can choose not only to physically complicate your existence, put you at medical risk, make you poorer by the choice, because we believe what? That
Sure, Your Honor. I think to answer, I think the question I think you led with and then I think it expanded on, but is still on the same issue, is as to when does a woman's interest enter. As far as we're concerned, it's there the entire time. Our point is that all of the interests are there the entire time, and Roe and Casey improperly prevent states from taking account and weighing those interests however they think best. We're not saying...
General, are there secular philosophers and bioethicists who take the position that the rights of personhood begin at conception or at some point other than viability?
I believe so. I mean, I think there's a wide array, of people of kind of all different views and of no faith views who would reasonably have that view, Your Honor. It's not tied to a religious view, and I don't think, were it otherwise, this court's jurisprudence on this issue would run right into some of its religious exercise jurisprudence.
Okay, so that was Scott Stewart, the Solicitor General of Mississippi, there answering those questions from Justice Sotomayor, Justice Alito there at the end. And to me, there was an opportunity there, a great opportunity. He seemed to be teed up on it in a couple points to basically say, and first I do want to say to Justice Sotomayor's argument there about the interests of the woman, let's just make this clear that it is not ever in the mother's best interest to have her child murdered. That is never going to be in the mother's best interest, right? So let's just be clear about that, regardless of the point she was trying to bring up there. But, why not just say, every child, every human being in the womb is just that, a human being from conception, fertilization. The science is clear. It's not a religious view. It's a scientific fact. And yes, secular, non-religious scientists and philosophers pretty much agree across the board. And so this is not really a question. This is really settled science. I didn't really hear it strongly stated. I don't want to criticize him too much because I think he did a fine job with the strategy I think he was going in with. But I guess, what is your take as you hear it back again, David?
Yeah, when I listened to that earlier today, I am more struck by the way that Justice Sotomayor asked several I will assume serious questions, but then didn't really allow for a serious answer from the Solicitor General. So I think that the justice really I think that the way that she conducted that line of questioning was really beneath her. And I think that the Solicitor General was right not to play into that too much, because there are there are issues that play in the case, and then there are partisans who are trying to sidetrack the argument and trying to go viral for their own agenda. But I really, I think that, just the suggestion that, even, comparing the abortion statistics such as they are with the maternal mortality statistics, much of which of the maternal mortality statistics in this country are an indication of the racial disparities that persist for minority communities in healthcare, and particularly in childbirth, where there are a lot of good pro-life organizations that are working on maternal mortality disparities right now. But to suggest, as Justice Sotomayor seems to have done, that the solution to racial disparities and the maternal mortality rate in this country that disproportionately affects minority communities, that the solution is that those minority women should just have more abortions because that will be safer for them than giving birth, and a Supreme Court justice is okay with the idea that it's safer for a minority woman to have an abortion than to give birth to her baby in this country. I thought that was one of several rather barbaric points that Justice Sotomayor made during this argument. And we could spend 2 hours going into why that's so barbaric, and so perhaps it was smart not to spend 2 hours of the court argument solely on the errors of just one of the justices. But I think that all options are on the table for the Supreme Court majority right now in this case, to the degree that they feel that the rights of children in the womb under the 14th and 5th Amendment are before them right now to provide further guidance to the states on that. I think that they can and should do that if they feel that for such an important question, it is better to handle that when they have the benefit of a full record and trial, court evidence below and all of that. I could see them waiting, and there might be good reasons to keep the decision narrower right now. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the 14th Amendment is very clear that all people under the jurisdiction of the government of the United States have rights to life and liberty that have to be protected by the states. There were many amicus briefs that were submitted in the Dobbs case that the states have not only the authority to protect children in the womb, but actually have the duty and the obligation to do so under the Constitution. And frankly, it shouldn't take an affirmative Supreme Court ruling spelling that out to get people to recognize it or get people to do it. All it should take is a Supreme Court ruling removing the fraudulent obstacles of Roe versus Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey in order to open up those avenues again. I think that's the way it was before Roe and Casey, and I think that's the way that it will be after Dobbs.
Right. Yeah. Let's get into that just a moment. But first, to your points on Justice Sotomayor, certainly agree. And as you talk about it, it just it reminds me of how this has divided the country for all of these now almost 50 years with Roe, even before that with some of the abortion laws taking place in some of the states. But this idea, this false logic, this bad idea that is pitting the interests of the child in the womb versus the interests of the mother, their interests are the same, right? That they are to be interested in living as a human person ought to live, which is a life of caring for one another. The child is naturally going to do that, right? The child is naturally there to grow and to be nurtured. The mother's job is certainly one more of an act of will, but the will ought to be certainly directed to the child, to the care of the child, to the love of the child. And if there are issues where that mother is unable to parent, if she feels that's something that is not going to be something she can do, then she can take that difficult step of placing the child for adoption. And there were some great remarks today, I think, by Justice Coney Barrett along those lines. So very interesting, but we're still hearing this false line trying to pit the interests of the mother versus the child. And that's just awful. That is not the right way to be thinking about this. And this is what's gotten us into all of this trouble. But I do want to drill down, and while it doesn't seem like we have enough time before the break, only a couple minutes, but I'm going to play this next clip when we come back from the break that I think lays out what you're saying about what is most probable for what is to come from this, which is an overturning of Roe and Casey, kicking it back to the states. And Justice Kavanaugh, I think, laid it out very, very well. And then the Solicitor General from Mississippi at the very end, he came back in and said, basically, what Justice Kavanaugh said there. So we're going to play that. But first, David, any other points that you'd like to get in here? We have about a minute and a half before the break.
Sure. I think there was one of the most interesting parts of the argument to me was when the counsel for the abortion clinics was arguing and was trying to suggest that there's a long tradition of American common law, of there being a common law liberty to have abortions before quickening, or before you can tell that the baby is alive and moving. And Justice Alito asked, how do you know that? Where would I find that common law tradition in American law? And the abortion lawyer said, there were, several high-level cases about it, hundreds of years ago. And he said, really, what's your best case? And she couldn't give him a case name. She just rattled off a Center for Reproductive Rights talking point about the modern, the 1900s era Roe v. Wade viability standard again. So that just shows you the level of deception that the abortion industry has woven into their whole project of industrial scale legalized abortion for the past 50 years and beyond. And it also shows again that that when we really drill down into the roots of our constitutional system, what we find is something that is very protective of children in the womb and of their families, and it shouldn't require big dramatic gestures to make that happen. It's like St. Augustine said, the truth is like a lion; it will defend itself. And I think we just have to get the bad stuff out of the way and let that happen.
Yes, there is so much hope to come if we can get this removed from our society. Again, making abortion, this killing of the child in the womb, making it illegal, and then ultimately unthinkable. we've gotten there with other human rights atrocities of the past. Certainly you can look at the example of slavery in the U.S. It was baked into the culture, baked into the system. So many thought you could never get rid of it, but there were abolitionists who pushed and pushed and pushed, and that was hard, and they did it, and eventually it became illegal. Eventually it's become unthinkable, and we would never think of it any other way at this point. So that is the trajectory we are on here with abortion. We are to be those abolitionists that are to keep pushing. We've got a great one here with us today, David Daleiden, founder of the Center of Medical Progress and investigative journalist. He's going to be back with us for the final segment. We're going to try to get in 2 quick clips in this final segment that you need to hear. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Prayer in time of affliction. Blessed, O Lord, be thy name forever. Who has permitted this affliction to come upon us? We cannot escape it, but must of necessity fly to thee to help us and turn it to our good. Lord, we are now in affliction. Our souls are ill at ease, for we are much troubled with this present suffering. Let it please thee, O Lord, to deliver us, for poor wretches that we are. What can we do without thee? Thy mighty hand can do all things. Give us patience, O Lord, and strength and peace. Help us, O God, and we will not fear, no matter how grievously we may be afflicted. O Lord, thy will be done. Welcome be the will of God. Sacred Heart of Jesus, we place our trust in thee. Amen.
You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience, wherever you enjoy podcasts. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can find all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, our website, and the free iCatholic Radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
Howdy, this is Adrian Fonseca, producer of the Catholic Drive Time Morning Show. We're happy to be with you on the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network each weekday morning at 7 a.m. We strive to keep you informed and inspired with insightful guests and a look at the news stories of the day that you need to know. Join us on the Catholic Drive Time Show every weekday morning at 7 a.m. on the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic Radio app. That's on the Station of the Cross and the iCatholic Radio app. God love you.
To the Simple Truth. Jim Havens here on this Current Events Wednesday. Our guest, David Daleiden, investigative journalist, founder of the Center for Medical Progress. You can find it at centerformedicalprogress.org. Final segment here, talking about the U.S. Supreme Court oral argument for Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health today. Listen to this clip. This is Justice Kavanaugh. He is talking with here, he's addressing one of the representatives for Jackson Women's Health, but I think you're just going to hear Justice Kavanaugh on this clip, and he basically lays out, he says, I think what the other side would say, and he pretty much lays out the strategy, the position of what the state of Mississippi is arguing for. Here it is.
I think the other side would say that the core problem here is that the court has been forced by the position you're taking and by the cases to pick sides on the most contentious social debate in American life, and to do so in a situation where they say that the Constitution is neutral on the question of abortion, the text and history, that the Constitution's neither pro-life nor pro-choice on the question of abortion, and they would say, therefore, it should be left to the people, to the states, or to Congress. And I think they also then continue, because the Constitution is neutral, that this court should be scrupulously neutral on the question of abortion, neither pro-choice nor pro-life. But because they say the Constitution doesn't give us the authority, we should leave it to the states, and we should be scrupulously neutral on the question. And that they are saying here, I think, that we should return to a position of neutrality on that contentious social issue rather than continuing to pick sides on that issue. So I think that's, at a big picture level, their argument. I want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Yes, a few points, if I may, Your Honor. First, of course, those very same arguments were made in Casey, and the court rejected them, saying that this philosophical disagreements can't be resolved in a way that a woman has no choice in the matter. And second, I don't think it would be a neutral position. The Constitution provides a guarantee of liberty. The court has interpreted that liberty to include the ability to make decisions related to childbearing, marriage, and family. Women have an equal right to liberty under the Constitution, Your Honor, and if they're not able to make this decision, if states can take control of women's bodies and force them to endure months of pregnancy and childbirth, then they will never have equal status under the Constitution.
Okay, so we did hear there from the response from Julie Reichelman, representing Jackson Women's Health, and basically what the Mississippi Solicitor General said when he got back on right at the very end is he said, Kavanaugh's right, we need to be scrupulously neutral. And so for me, you know, I get it. I understand it's a sort of an incremental approach here, and maybe legally that's the right play. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but just one who loves humanity and does not want to see our children being murdered in the womb every day by the thousands. I want to stand up for each and every one of them, and certainly, like everybody else, wants to get to the end of this as soon as possible. So I'm hoping the justices will actually end up deciding that the Constitution is not scrupulously neutral. If they do decide that, then that's going to kick it back to the states, overturn Roe, overturn Casey. That's good. I'd be happy with that in a certain sense, of course. But I do hope they see what David mentioned earlier under the 14th Amendment, the right to life for every person. Every child in the womb is a person, therefore equal rights. They have to enshrine the right to life to the child in the womb. I want to get David's thoughts, but I want to get this last clip in real quick before we do that. This is Justice Alito and again, Julie Reichelman, who's representing Jackson Women's Health. A quick exchange. Listen to this.
What was the principal source that the court relied on in Roe for its historical analysis? Who was the author of that article?
I apologize, Your Honor, I don't remember the author. I know that the court spent many pages of the opinion doing a historical analysis. There's also a brief on behalf of several key American historian associations that go through that history in detail, because there's even more information now that supports Roe's legal conclusions.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so she was asked about the principal source regarding the history in Roe that was used, and she doesn't know the answer. And the fact is that she might know the answer, and she doesn't want to say. Larry Lader, professed secular humanist, founder of NARAL, he wrote a 212-page book called Abortion, published in 1966, a propaganda piece arguing for the complete legalization of abortion. He published excerpts of it in Reader's Digest the same month it was released. In the book Subverted by Sue Ellen Browder, this is where I learned about all this. It states the following: much of the bogus abortion history in his book was invented by Cyril Chestnut Means Jr., a New York law school professor who later became a NARAL attorney. After later published Means' fabricated history in his abortion book, Means managed to get his misstatements of historic fact published in a reputable scholarly journal, the New York Law Forum. He then proceeded to present his radical revision of the history of abortion to the Supreme Court in an amicus brief to Roe v. Wade. Justice Harry Blackmun, in turn, relied heavily and uncritically on this history to write his abortion opinions. Roe v. Wade, Doe v. Bolton. Blackmun cited Lader's abortion book, this propaganda book, no less than 7 times, and Means's fabricated history another 7 times. No other historian was cited. So the fact that Alito is asking that question, I think he knows this. I'm hoping that he's on board to revisit this in a big way. But David, I don't know, what do you take away from all that or from anything else? Final comments. We've got a few minutes to go.
Yeah. I mean, I think it may be correct what Justice Kavanaugh is saying, that the Constitution is neutral on abortion, but the Constitution is definitely not neutral on the right to life for all human beings. And so it may be that just the nature of the way that the law works and the way that sort of judges and lawyers work by the nature of their profession and their temperaments, that there might have to, this might have to be a sort of 2-step process where first we need to sort of correct our vision because Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood v. Casey have really tilted the scale and kind of placed blinders over everybody looking at issues of abortion policy and our brothers and sisters in the womb. And we need to move that unjust weight from the scale first before then we can say, okay, now that we know that there's no special rules and no special protection around this area, now we know every human being has a right to life. So how are the different states across the country actually protecting that and implementing that? And then we get into whether the right to life of children in the womb is actually being adequately constitutionally protected or not. I think that because it's very true that everyone has rights to liberty. Pregnant women have rights to liberty. I think pregnant women have rights to carry their children in their pregnancy in a way that is comfortable for them, in a way that is safe for them, and all of those good things. And their children also have a right to life. And those, and those two things actually should never be in conflict. And it should be a scandal to the world if they ever were in conflict. And one of the most beautiful things, one of those beautiful messages that I think the state of Mississippi and the Attorney General of Mississippi has been proclaiming ever since we knew the court was going to hear this case is that one of the great social tragedies of Roe and Casey is that they have sort of averted everyone's gaze and removed our thoughts and our feelings from the process of trying to make sure that we correct for any of that. If there's ever a situation where now is not always now should always be a good time to have a baby. Now should always be a good time to welcome a new little person into the human family. And if for some reason it's not, we should be able to bring all of the resources of our civilization to bear on that foundational problem. And we've not been able to because of this abortion distortion. But that time is coming to a close. It is a new era, and it's a glorious new era that's ahead of us. So I'm very optimistic, and I hope you all are too.
Yes. Wonderful, David. It's been a great blessing to have you on. David Daleiden, investigative journalist, founder of the Center for Medical Progress. Go there, centerformedicalprogress.org. All of his good work is there. But yeah, great blessing to have you on. Really appreciate the conversation today, your insights, some of the distinctions that you offered to us, your commentary. Thank you for sharing with us the mood there in D.C. All of it a great blessing. Thank you, David.
Thank you, guys.
All right, and we will be back tomorrow on The Simple Truth. If you have anything you'd like to send my way, Jim H. at thestationofthecross.com. God bless you.
The Station of